Hi, welcome back to the I Heart Mess YouTube channel. I'm Emily Kirkpatrick, a professional writer specializing in fashion and pop culture, and this is my second attempt at a roundup of the best of the worst celebrity fashion for the month. Today we're going to be taking a look at September and all of the things that happened during this month. It was the VMAs, it was the Emmys, it was the Venice Film Festival, and all of the fashion weeks. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into it. I'm going to start out today with a recap of what happened on the Video Music Awards red carpet. To begin with, there were way too many homages. It was a whole lot of young pop stars dressed up as old pop stars. Tate McRae's look was a reference to Britney Spears at the 2001 VMAs, wearing a Dolce & Gabbana mini dress. Tate's was Roberto Cavalli, which she chopped into a mini dress, and unfortunately you could really tell that she had chopped it off right before the red carpet. I think the problem with her dress was also that the lace was crazy. The beauty of Britney's dress is that the lace is very transparent, so you can see the black bra and underwear underneath really shine through, whereas Tate's was so convoluted that I think the underwear just got lost underneath and the effect was not as powerful. We also saw Meg Thee Stallion dress up as Britney Spears, doing Slave for You cosplay. Halsey wore a Versace dress that Elizabeth Hurley wore in 1996. She told reporters on the red carpet that no one's worn it since then. And it feels like more of a brag of what her stylist is able to do and what he's able to pull, rather than a compliment to the dress itself. Sabrina Carpenter wore Madonna's 1991 Oscars gown designed by Bob Mackie. For me, this dress was just pretty boring and pretty unremarkable. Obviously the homage, iconic, but the dress itself fell flat, especially when it didn't come with the accessories that Madonna wore it with. In other words, like tons and tons of diamonds, a huge fur coat, and Michael Jackson as her date. I feel like these types of homages have become popular for two reasons. For one, it's automatic PR. It's an easy headline, right? We see this all the time when celebrities wear the same dress on the red carpet, but now you're not only wearing the same dress as another celebrity, but a super iconic one from history. The other reason I think this has become so popular is that it's a way to align your celebrity with an icon of the past. So we see Kim Kardashian do this often, most famously by wearing Marilyn Monroe's dress. It's a way for her to put herself in the same sentence and the same pantheon of greats. But the problem with the Tate McRae or Sabrina Carpenter doing that is that they have yet to establish their own visual identity and their own aesthetic. I don't know who they are before they're adapting the costume of someone who came before them. The other problem with this is it's just kind of dull. We've already seen these looks before. We want to see new, now, next. What does the future of fashion look like? Not what the past looked like. One of my readers compared this red carpet phenomenon to what's happening in Hollywood right now, with the way that we're taking old movie IP, we're remaking these old films, we're creating sequels, prequels, blockbusters. It's all the same material we're super familiar with. It's the Marvel universe of fashion designers. We're also starting to see this play out on the runway. Dolce & Gabbana has always been guilty of replaying their greatest hits, but when they collaborated with Kim Kardashian, they invited her to curate some of their most iconic looks from their archives, and they had them remade for her new collection. We just saw them do this again at their spring 2025 runway show, in which they showed an homage to Jean-Paul Gaultier's iconic bullet bra that he made for Madonna in 1990, and it was almost an identical replica. It's very unclear to me why they do this homage. What is the point of it? We already have the original. Why do we need Dolce & Gabbana's take on it, which is just a replica? But for all the pop girlies on the VMA red carpet that night, the one who really took it home for me was Addison Rae. People really did not get this look. They really hated it, and I think that's why it's going to end up becoming one of the most iconic looks from this era. I'm a little partial to it, of course, because it's one of my trend predictions coming true, which is that this year we would see someone show up on a red carpet in just full lingerie, and just bra underwear exclusively. And that is exactly what Addison did, tacking on a tutu to the butt. But I think the brilliance of Addison's look is that it isn't just a simple bra and panty set. She found a way to make it sexual but strange again, very much the way we talked about last month with her Diet Pepsi music video. Her bra has added padding to the sides that gives it a sort of like lifted and out look. It's very odd. It reminds me a lot of the artist Michaela Stark, who experiments a lot with prosthetics and body modifications. Most recently, she collaborated with Victoria's Secret. I think Addison's stylist, Dara, actually put it best when she said on TikTok,
"Some of y'all may not have been conscious during all of these VMA references that everyone wants to throw around willy-nilly. But I was, albeit very young. These moments had a profound effect on me, but I remember all of those things that y'all want to love and gag on now, in hindsight, people were mad. They were not liking it. The snake, the blood, the kiss, the titty. Everyone asking for it to be a bodysuit corset, bra that fit. Like, I'm so sorry, my dear. Had that been the case, we wouldn't be here having a conversation.
And I think that's exactly the point. Whether you love it or you hate it, Asin's look starts a conversation. It's very memorable and it gets memed, right? It gets sent around the internet. And for a young Gen Z star trying to break out of her TikTok past into this new realm of pop culture, I think that's exactly how you do it. You make this big statement, very divisive, but people talk about you either way and people are going to remember it either way. But while Asin was great, I think that my best dress of the night has to go to the Insane Clown Posse. While these two guys weren't included in a lot of red carpet roundups, their outfits absolutely deserve to top the list. Both wore short suits. One was rainbow tie-dye while the other was white bandana print. Both were immaculately tailored, and specifically with the tie-dyed look, it was covered in this beautiful smattering of rainbow rhinestones, even down to the collar that was like perfectly ombreed. And my other best dress of the night by far was Chappell Roan, who brings me into my next trend prediction, which is Renaissance Fair Fall. Chappell wore this incredible burgundy custom Y project gown that was very sheer and gave me big, like, Drew Barrymore and Ever After vibes. She paired this dress with a cloak and an antique rug that she said were 300 and 600 years old respectively. Although the historical costuming subreddit has a bone to pick with her because apparently they're only about 100 years old, turn of the century, and they were always intended to be like Victorian costume pieces. She then changed into a full suit of armor for her Joan of Arc inspired VMAs performance before changing again into a Paco Rabanne totally sheer chainmail dress for the after party. At one point during the awards show, Megan Thee Stallion also came out in full gladiator regalia, reminding us that it's not just fashion that's feeling Renaissance Fair Fall, it's also the movie industry. Gladiator 2 will be coming out in November. Baz Luhrmann just announced that he's working on a Joan of Arc project, and Al Pacino and Peter Dinklage are currently working on an adaptation of King Lear, which has led to Al Pacino walking around New York City looking very much like Merlin the Wizard. We also saw a lot of chainmail at the Venice Film Festival. Omar Apollo attended wearing a Loewe chainmail top, as did Emma Laird in custom Louis Vuitton, and Glenn Close showed up in an Oscar de la Renta gilded birdcage. At the end of the summer, fashion reporter Alexander Hildreth also did multiple videos on the topic of the Weird Evil trend on TikTok, which is essentially modern takes on armor, kind of metal accents to clothing, and new takes on corsetry. All of which added up together kind of lends to this idea that everybody's starting to dress like they're medieval wenches and knaves. As for why all of this is happening right now, to me it seems like a direct response to the rise of fast fashion we've seen in the recent decade. Medieval clothing harkens back to this time of artisanship and luxe textiles and hand-woven goods and things that are just, we don't have that quality of craftsmanship in the things that we wear anymore. And in that way, it's also become like the ultimate luxury, right? It's not just a designer piece made in a factory, it's something that's fully made by hand by someone who's the best in their line of work. Which is also why I believe that we might see a pivot in celebrity fashion towards more of these historical fashion pieces. Celebrities are always looking for ways to differentiate their wardrobes from the masses. So way back in the 90s and the early aughts, that used to be an expensive pair of designer jeans, or even just access to designer goods or the it bag of the time in general. Then with the Kardashians, we start to see them pivot towards these archival designer pieces, even rarer to get, even more difficult in much more limited supply. And once again, with the rise in these homages, where you're not just wearing an archival designer piece, you're wearing an archival designer piece formerly worn by Madonna, you again see the goalposts shifting of what is luxury, what is exclusivity. And so I can see, you know, being able to pull a dress from 300 years ago, 600 years ago, becoming the new definition of what is luxury, what is exclusive, what is worthy of a celebrity's wardrobe. The medieval period is, of course, also very much marked by the bubonic plague. And as a society still very much in the throes of their own pandemic, it makes sense that visually we would also start referring back to that time. Or perhaps we're all just feeling very nostalgic for a time before capitalism. Next, I'm going to get into Fashion Week and a few of my favorite celebrity looks from those shows. The first is Madonna at the Loire show. I am obsessed with the sunglasses that she wore. They are, of course, by the brand Loire, and they make it look like she has huge anime eyes. She looks like a Powerpuff Girl, especially with the big broad shoulders, very Mojo Jojo-esque. It's such an interesting look, cartoonish look, especially in the world of celebrity where they're already so into body modification and pushing everything to the absolute extreme. To exaggerate the eye like this, I think is very funny. It absolutely was not intentional. This is just happens to be the colorway of the sunglasses and how they were photographed in that particular moment. But I think it should absolutely be intentional and everybody should start getting into it. Next, I think Cardi B's hair at the Mugler Spring 2025 show was immaculate. It is like Dwight Schrute crossed with Danzig, a bowl cut but made high fashion. The way that it echoes the point on the collar of her jacket I find to be so satisfying. My only problem with this look is that the skirt suit Mugler gave her absolutely does not fit. You can see this in every paparazzi image of her from the runway show. She is clutching that blazer to her torso. You can tell that she is scared that everything is going to come tumbling out, and it just undermines the whole effect of the suit, which is supposed to be like super tailored, super crisp, very like woman in charge. And she cannot portray a woman in charge when she's concerned about flashing everyone. The next look I want to talk about is actually from a runway collection. It was Gigi Hadid who walked for Vetements wearing a mini dress made out of DHL duct tape. I thought this look was really interesting because while yes, it is a reference to a 2018 Vetements piece that was just a straight up DHL uniform, it's also a direct copy of the duct tape catsuit that Balenciaga made for Kim Kardashian for their fall 2022 show. Except it kind of misses the point of the original Balenciaga catsuit, which is that it turned Kim into a sort of walking billboard for the brand, whereas this, Gigi, is just a walking billboard for international delivery. I also just thought it was interesting that Gigi would even do this show, considering her brother Anwar Hadid had a pretty controversial appearance on the brand's runway for their spring 2023 show, where he wore a t-shirt that read, "Not Mom's Favorite." Of course, this was not a reference to Real Housewife Yolanda Hadid, but rather to the designer Garam Gvassalia's own mother, who walked in the Balenciaga collection designed by his brother Demna, to which he was not invited. Much like the Gallagher brothers from Oasis, Demna and Garam have been locked in a one-sided beef for all of time. For those who don't know, Garam, the designer of Vetements, is the brother of Demna, the designer of Balenciaga. They co-founded Vetements together in 2014. The following year, Demna became the creative director of Balenciaga solo, and in 2019 he left Vetements entirely, leaving Garam very bitter, to say the least. But the feud really kicks off in earnest in the summer of 2023, when Garam is interviewed by the New York Times. He tells them, "I think my brother is very talented, but I have a completely different approach to things. He had his good run of 10 years, and I think his era is slowly going to its finish line. Now it is my time." He then went on to say that if you consider how old he is, he's the younger brother, compared to Demna, he's actually way more successful than him. And he also accused Balenciaga of always releasing their collections and their new capsules and whatever on the same day as Vetements in order to intentionally drown out any media and press he might be able to generate with his own collection. In that same interview, Garam also addressed the accusations that he copies a lot of his brother's work, to which he explained that actually his pieces have a completely different construction, and when they are the same, Vetements are better anyway, so who cares? And in fact, in that same collection featuring Anwar, we see Garam take a couple more digs at Demna, copying Balenciaga's collaboration with Adidas, and even casting Serbian pop star Jelena Karlusa, who has regularly accused Kim Kardashian of stealing her entire look. So kind of Garam taking on the original as his muse, whereas of course Kim Kardashian is Demna's muse. Speaking of the Kardashians, Kylie Jenner attended the Balmain show in a gown that was beaded with an image of her own face. I thought it was a really interesting and telling choice in attire, as it's this very overtly self-promotional move at a moment in time where we're starting to see the Kardashian influence wane over public life. The dress felt very much like a billboard asking people to remember who she is. Balmain as a brand has been very much enmeshed with the Kardashian family for over a decade now. The relationship really begins back when Kim Kardashian wore one of Olivia Roostein's dresses as one of her dresses for the lead up to her wedding to Kanye West. From there, the relationship evolves and they've become the face of the brand. They've walked in the runway. Kylie released a lip kit in conjunction with one of Balmain's collection. And I think that this dress featuring Kylie's face really just lays bare the transactional nature of their relationship and the way that it's kind of this circular legitimization, right? Like, Balmain works with the Kardashians and thus he dresses celebrities as a high fashion brand. The Kardashians wear Balmain and thus they are people who are, you know, fashionable and high end and have access to that sort of luxury good. And not only access to it, but actually shape entire collections, shape whole campaigns around it. In other words, the whole thing is kind of just a lot of hot air. The next trend I want to talk to you about is something that I call bag maxing. I wrote a whole essay about this on my Substack, but basically it's all about absolutely drowning your purse in keychains and doodad. It is like maximalist accessory ornamentation. I think this trend really plays off the nostalgia for youth, specifically like the way that we would all decorate our backpacks in the 90s, or like elementary school kids like tack on all their favorite toys and like gadgets and Tamagotchis. It's also playing off of our nostalgia for Jane Birkin, the French actress and fashion icon who Hermès's Birkin bag is named after. She famously would just abuse, puncture, pierce, put stickers on, and throw these bags around. And people are very much, I think, looking for that type of like lived in, personalized, worn in expression through their own accessories today. We first see this trend on Miu Miu's Spring 2024 runway, Balenciaga's Summer 2024 collection, and Coach's Fall 2024 collection. In Miu Miu, we see this trend manifest as sort of just overstuffed bags, jam-packed full of stuff, sweaters, a change of shoes, a baseball cap for later, and then lanyards and strings and straps all sort of wrapped around the handle. Balenciaga's version on this is a little different. Theirs is more focused on the keychain itself as like kitsch. So we see garlands of keys and branded keychains hanging off of their already very expensive rodeo bags, and each of them is of course sold individually. Coach meanwhile is suggesting that the best accessory for a handbag is an even smaller handbag, complete with its own set of keychains. We've since seen celebrities start to embrace this look as well. Most notably, Lily Allen has been posting her own Birkin bags to Instagram, covered in keychains and cameras and the handles wrapped in scarves. Dua Lipa likewise regularly uses her Birkin that's totally been personalized as her carry-on bag. Gigi Hadid attended the Deadpool and Wolverine premiere carrying a Miu Miu Arcady bag that had all sorts of little bits and bobs dangling off of it, including a Deadpool keychain. And most recently, Rachel Sennott celebrated her birthday by posing on a bed with a Balenciaga rodeo bag. And it's not just celebrities who are into this look. In August, lists confirmed that searches for bag charms have gone up 150% over the last 6 months. And in perhaps the most luxe iteration of the bag maxing trend, Interview magazine just interviewed the Babani sisters at the Hermès runway show, who had attached every size of Kelly bag onto the other Kelly, creating sort of like a waterfall of regular to mini to micro Kelly bag. Elsewhere on TikTok, Coach Shale's associate Brandon Wen every day styles handbags for his 300,000 followers, adding on chains and carabiners and even smaller handbags, showing his viewers how you can style your own handbag while also racking up a whole lot of sales and commissions in the process. We also see a number of TikTok creators Birkinifying their own bags, adding on all sorts of personal memorabilia, fashioning their own keychains out of prized possessions, and just generally making these really high-end luxury bags their own. I think you could even argue that the Stanley tumbler craze falls well within the realm of bag maxing, as it's no longer just about owning the reusable container itself, it's about all the accessories that come along with it. We see various creators making these get ready with me videos in which you see them strapping and snapping on all these various accoutrements onto their Stanley tumbler, furthering this idea that comes with bag maxing that our objects actually need more objects. While bag maxing can be fun and silly, I think it also just really lays bare the current state of capitalism, especially when you're looking at it from the luxury level. We're seeing that, you know, designer objects are no longer enough, like your designer objects need a million more designer objects attached onto them. Instead of DIYing or personally curating the accessories that you put on your bag, this sort of hat-on-a-hat consumerism is just selling back to you a prefabricated personality. It gives the consumer the illusion of uniqueness and self-expression. Bag maxing at the luxury level suggests that you no longer have to live a full life in order to have accessories that reflect that. You can purchase the aura of experience. The interesting story comes pre-baked into the object. And now it's time for hyper-realistic muscle suits. As with all trends that I predict in my newsletter, this absolutely started out as a joke and it has become anything but. It started because I was just thinking about how in Hollywood, women are always asked to do these kind of extreme body modifications, to be hotter, to be thinner, to be bustier, to be plumped up, to be sunken in. And I never understood why men are kind of forced to match them, right? And I also thought, well, an easy shortcut to achieve that would be to wear these sort of fake muscle suits, very George Michael from Arrested Development. And now we're seeing celebrities start to actually do that, but it's actually exclusively women who are doing that. First, we have Doechii on the cover of Paper magazine, who's doing sort of Johnny Cochran meets Usher drag. As a woman, it's also kind of a subversive way to do a full nudity look where you're showing everything, you're posing just in your underwear, but it isn't actually your body at all. The cover is meant to be an homage to Brooke Shields' 1990 Paper magazine cover called Pretty Butch, in which she also does male drag. I think this cover is also very indicative of the vast difference between where men and women are with the concept of playing with gender and androgyny. It's just interesting to think how radical Harry Styles' Vogue cover was, where all he was really doing was wearing full skirts, versus for a woman to achieve something comparable, she literally has to transform physically into the opposite gender. And then of course we have Jojo Siwa on the cover of Lady Gun wearing a fully bedazzled chest and codpiece by Spark Kyle Studio. Not only is this a phenomenal image, I also think it's exactly how you blow to smithereens any sort of child star persona, which seems to be what JoJo has been trying to do this whole time, but like failing pretty miserably at. I found the rest of the editorial to be pretty disappointing, but it was also pretty par for the JoJo course. It was pretty try-hard, pretty overly animated, and the fashion was not as subversive as that original cover image promised it would be. But I do think that the more JoJo allows other creatives to shape her aesthetic and push the boundaries, the better off she'll be. Especially the less she works with her own mother as her costume designer, I think her career will just take off infinitely from there. Another little trend I've been noticing is funeral veils. I think a really good example of this is Aubrey Plaza in Dolce & Gabbana Fall 2024. At the premiere for Megalopolis, she very much looks like a slutty widow on the prowl. We see a lot more examples of this at the Venice Film Festival. You have Raffi Cassidy in Chanel Spring 2023 Haute Couture wearing just kind of like a wisp of a piece of toile over her face. All I really have to say about that is thank God Chanel didn't make her wear the top hat and spats that went with it on the runway. And then Lady Gaga, also at the Venice Film Festival promoting the Joker, wore a custom Dior gown, which she paired with a 2001 Philip Treacy headpiece that once belonged to Isabelle Blow. For those who aren't familiar with Blow, she was one of the great fashion icons of all time. She was Philip Treacy's muse and a British magazine editor. She is also responsible for discovering the models Stella Tennant and Sophie Dahl. And she is pretty much the reason Alexander McQueen's career exists. She bought his entire graduate collection and was responsible for promoting him within the industry. So if you're ever wondering who Lady Gaga is referencing with her fashion, I can guarantee you it is almost always either Isabella Blow or Daphne Guinness. As for why the funeral veil trend is happening right now, it feels very much like the chainmail trend to me, sort of fall of empire, very end of days. Now this trend hasn't fully come to fruition yet, but it's just something I've been ruminating on ever since I saw Anne Hathaway wearing double eye patches while out and about running errands. Basically, it's skincare as status symbol. I think we're going to continue to see beauty, specifically skincare and self-care rituals, brought out from the bathroom into the public sphere. I think the groundwork was really laid for this trend with Into the Gloss's Top Shelfie series, which saw influencers and editors flexing their medicine cabinet and all of the brands and the many products that it contained. And then you see this evolve with the brand Starface, which has very much normalized pimple patches for Gen Z and made it almost as equal an accessory as what purse you're carrying. Likewise, I think we're going to start to see sheet masks and eye patches find ways to make themselves relevant and trendy and want to be seen by people outside of the home. I think the appeal of this sort of visible signs of skincare is also that it's just a new form of quiet luxury, right? It communicates that this is the type of person who is able to care for themselves, who has free times, who can indulge in this fashion, and isn't that like kind of the ultimate luxury in a capitalist environment. I'd now like to talk about Emma Laird in Louis Vuitton Resort 2025 at the Venice Film Festival, which is quite possibly one of the ugliest outfits I've seen all year long. Incredible stuff. I think it's pretty funny that the public bullied Virginie Viard out of her job at Chanel just because they thought that the clothing she was dressing Margot Robbie in was so ugly it was unforgivable. Meanwhile, Nicolas Ghesquiere at Louis Vuitton has really skirted under the radar with what he does to celebrities. Let's not forget when he put stars like Maud Apatow, Chloe Grace Moretz, and Jaden Smith in tops that looked like shingled thatch roofs of English countryside homes, or when he put Haim and Sarah Paulson in comically oversized zippers, or dressed up Alicia Vikander like a seafaring clown on safari. But back to Emma. I feel like each individual element of Emma's outfit is totally fine, very compelling even, very interesting stuff, but all together it turns into this sort of like real space-age horse girl fantasy. Extreme structured harlequin corset that's needlessly being cinched with a thick 80s belt, a silk jodhpur that's a mushroom cloud explosion around the hips, and a thigh-high boot that ends in a wooden square wedge heel. All of these elements just don't seem to be in communication with each other, and the boots also seem very clompy and annoying. Of all of Balenciaga's celebrity brand ambassadors, I think nobody wears it better than Isabelle Huppert. While all of her gowns have been great this year, my favorite personally was the very casual leisure suit she showed up to the Venice Film Festival wearing. I think what makes this look so great is the same thing that made Demna at Vetements so great. It has that sort of cheekiness, it feels like a prank is being played on everyone involved, and yet it's dead serious. Yes, this look is another early aughts redux, but with a clever twist. The velour tracksuit is classic Paris Hilton, but instead of Juicy Couture, it's being done by one of the biggest brands in the world. You have an I Heart Paris baseball cap that looks like it came straight from the gift shop, but it's being worn in Venice. A French actress doing American cosplay down to the branded to-go coffee cup, but as she just steps off a gondola. And I think all of this is even heightened when you consider that Isabelle is also the festival's 2024 jury president. A fact that makes her rolling up to a red carpet like it's Erewhon even more comedic. I think that this is a realm that Demna really thrives in, and he would be smart to lean more into this sort of meta-commentary camp. And the last thing I want to leave you with today is these absolutely phenomenal images of Lottie Moss falling on her face outside of the Chiltern Firehouse during London Fashion Week. Lottie Moss, who's the younger sister of Kate Moss, was leaving Burberry's after party when she tripped on her monster Marc Jacobs platform heels. And the result is nothing short of high art. There's something about the way she angled her body so she would fall and save her cigarette and her phone, the fur coat and the sequin of her hood against the mossy cobblestones, the less is more rhinestoned across her butt facing dead at the camera. This could be a high fashion campaign for Marc Jacobs. Somewhere out there right now, Juergenthaler is absolutely kicking himself that he is not the one who took these photographs. Sometimes paparazzi images transcend to the level of sublime, and such is the case with Lottie Moss falling on her face. Okay, that's all the looks I've got for you for September. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, do whatever else you're supposed to do with videos that you like. And you can also sign up for my weekly newsletter at iheartmess.com. The link will be in the caption below. See you back here next month for a look at all the spooky and scary fashions that took place in October. Goodbye.